everyone, it's Mary Brownlee, licensed professional counselor. Today we're going to talk about narcissistic personality disorder. So if you are an abuse survivor, you likely have heard of this term. You probably have done a lot of research. And what I hope to add to this conversation is not only to give you a mental health therapist's real definition of what the actual real life mental health disorder looks like. So we'll be talking about that as far as the DSM-5 and how it clarifies narcissistic personality disorder. But I'm also going to share with you my top 25 ways that you can tell that you are in a relationship with a narcissist, whether that's your parent, a loved one, a partner, a friend, for example. They share a lot of similar traits in terms of how they treat people, and they can leave a lot of damage. So these individuals are the ones that are causing complex post-traumatic stress disorder and things like borderline personality disorder and other trauma-related disorders. So I've already covered like borderline personality disorder and complex PTSD on my channel, and now we're going to cover one of the personality disorders that actually causes the other two. So I hope you find this information helpful. Please leave a like, subscribe. Your support of my channel is so appreciated. And at the end, I'll even put in another cute video of my potbelly pig and a couple of my other four-legged babies. So I hope you enjoy. And without further ado, let's get started. So narcissistic personality disorder is made up of multiple criteria. A person has to meet all the criteria to have the disorder. I think it's important to point out that people can have traits of narcissism, but not the full-blown disorder. So what you're really looking at here is a pervasive pattern of behavior over a long period of time that is really inflexible and doesn't change. So it's really a repeated pattern. This is not just a few things here and there that you might observe. It's really a pervasive pattern over a long period of time. And it's pretty inflexible to change. So keep that in mind as we go through the criteria together. So the first is criteria A. You're going to have impairments in personality functioning, manifested by impairments in self-functioning, A or B. And quite frankly, they can have both as well. So identity is really where you're going to see them have excessive reference to others for their self-esteem and self-definition. They're going to have an exaggerated self-appraisal that can alternate between extremes of low or high levels and fluctuations in emotion regulation related to current levels of self-esteem. So that's a lot of words that basically says that they use others to prop up their self-esteem and to define themselves. They very much exaggerate their own self-importance, and it can fluctuate between very high levels or even very low levels. And also they have a hard time emotionally regulating based on where their self-esteem is at. So if they're feeling pretty good about themselves, they're going to have a pretty good ability to regulate emotions. But if they're feeling poorly about themselves, you're going to see the narcissistic rage. All right, so the second slide here is going to talk about their difficulty with self-direction. So essentially, they're going to create goals based on others' approval, and they have unreasonable personal standards where they want to see themselves as exceptional, and they're often unaware of their own motivations. So this is where they lack insight. It's important to note that brain scans of individuals with NPD have shown that the portions of the brain responsible for empathy and insight are less than those who have a healthy brain and don't have this personality disorder. So they really have a hard time understanding themselves, which makes sense because they clearly do not understand other people or other people's emotions or feelings or thoughts. So they're very much preoccupied with their own self, and they prop themselves up as better than other people. All right, the third slide, there's a big word and that is because a narcissistic individual with the full disorder has to meet both criteria. So not only the first two slides that we went over, but also this as well. So they're going to have impairments in interpersonal functioning, again, A or B or both. The first one is empathy. So a lot of you probably recognize this if you know people who are highly narcissistic, is they don't have an ability to recognize or identify other people's emotions or needs. They're excessively tuned in to other people's reactions, but again, only if it relates to themselves. And they over and underestimate their impact on other people. So they do have impaired empathy. They don't really care about other people's needs and feelings and thoughts and perceptions. And they're very much self-absorbed. And they really are overly tuned in to other people's perceptions and reactions of them. And again, that makes sense because they don't really have a firm sense of identity. They're kind of empty, vast black holes, so to speak. So they are looking to other people to form some sense of self, since that is an area that they lack greatly. Another area that they lack is in the area of intimacy. So their relationships are going to be mostly superficial. Again, they don't have a lot of depth to them, so they can't really participate in a deep emotional world with someone else. So you're going to feel that lack of genuine, authentic connection with them. And also, relationships serve to regulate their self-worth and their self-esteem. So they have very little to no genuine interest in other people's experiences, and people are used for personal gain. So they definitely treat people like objects. The analogy I like to use is, say you have a ballpoint pen and it runs out of ink. What are you going to do? You're going to toss it in the trash, right? Because it's no longer useful. So that's how narcissists treat people around them. We are only objects, and as soon as we are not useful to them, we go in the garbage as well, or the narcissistic discard. All right, here's criteria B. They're going to have pathological personality traits in the following areas. So area A is grandiosity. So that's where they have feelings of entitlement. It can be either overt, which means like it's really in your face. You probably can think of a couple people right off the top of your head that are really kind of in your face narcissists, and it's very easy to tell, or more covert and hidden. So there is such a term called covert narcissism. I'll be covering the different types of narcissism in another video, but yeah, covert is more hidden, it's more subtle. They're also going to be self-centered. They firmly believe that they are superior to other people, and they're very condescending. So yeah, none of this is pleasant to experience if you're on the receiving end of this treatment. Area B is attention seeking, and you're going to see excessive attempts to be the center of attention, where they want to seek admiration from other people. Again, covert narcissists are going to be a little more subtle about this and won't be in your face, and I'll cover more of that in other videos. The last few criteria is criteria C, D, and E. Their personality function and traits are stable across time and consistent across situations and environments. So that's kind of what I said in the beginning. They don't change. They're going to be with this person for the lifetime. And NPD is one of the hardest mental health disorders to treat. Realistically, you're not going to see a lot of narcissistic individuals come into treatment unless, say, for example, maybe they've been court ordered. But yeah, they don't think they have a problem, and they blame everyone else, and they lack insight and empathy. So you're not going to really see these individuals coming into therapy for treatment. Criteria D is the disturbance is not due to a person's developmental stage or sociocultural environment. And that's a lot of words basically for just telling you that, like, for example, we would expect a toddler to be self-absorbed and narcissistic. That's kind of the point. They're toddlers. It's all me, me, me. But when you're a 60-year-old adult, for example, you really should have outgrown the toddler stage. So yeah, there are some developmental stages, or even perhaps cultural dynamics at play that may impact somebody's expression of narcissistic traits. And then criteria E, symptoms are not caused by another condition. For example, drug use. You know, a lot of people who abuse drugs can act narcissistic, but when they're not on drugs, they don't act narcissistic. Or for example, maybe there's a medication that is impairing the person's ability to act normally. Or like head trauma, or a medical condition like Alzheimer's or dementia can change people's personality. So all of those criteria basically are meaning you have to rule those out. So if you've ruled all of those out and the person still exhibits all the other criteria, then that is when they meet the criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. So now that we've covered the kind of medical and professional verbiage, so to speak, of narcissistic personality disorder, now I wanted to switch gears and just let's get real, let's have some real talk, and just use plain language to talk about some of the top ways that you know you're in a relationship with a narcissistic individual, what that feels like, what it looks like, because that is far more helpful usually to survivors than the fancy medical verbiage that I just went over. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started with number 1. So if you are in a relationship with a narcissist, what you probably have observed is they have no ability to self-reflect on their behaviors. So if you try to address something with them that they've done that's very hurtful or, is abusive, for example, what you're going to see is that they're always going to blame shift back onto you. There will never be accountability. The narcissist does not have the capacity for self-reflection. Therefore, you really can't have any productive dialogues with them when their behavior has crossed a line. Number 2, the narcissist lacks empathy and does not care how they make you feel. So again, if you do try to address anything they've done that has been harmful, they have no care in the world for how much damage they have done to you. You could be devastated and crying and trying to get them to understand they don't care. So again, they're always going to blame shift back onto you. You're the problem. They haven't done anything wrong, and they don't care that they are causing harm to other people. Number 3, they communicate through triangulation instead of directly and respectfully. So this is where you see the flying monkeys, if you've ever heard of that term. It's where the narcissist doesn't not speak to you one-on-one if there's some sort of problem. Instead, what they'll do is typically have somebody else go speak to you for them. So that's called triangulation. So they rarely, if ever, will actually have productive dialogue one-on-one with you. Instead, it's oftentimes through third parties, and it's a form of manipulation and control. And certainly, they are not going to speak respectfully to you either. Number 4, they blame everyone else and constantly play the victim. They have no accountability ever. So yeah, trying to get them to ever take accountability for some behavior is like an endless game of dodgeball, and they're always able to successfully avoid the ball that you are attempting to throw at them. And yeah, so exhausting, no accountability. You go round and round, it never ends. Number 5, this is another very common narcissistic trait. They monopolize conversations and they are not interested in you. So they are the center of attention. They can often talk excessively and for a long period of time. They're never going to ask you about your life or your thoughts or your feelings or your kids or anything going on. They have no interest in you as a person. It is all about them all the time. Number 6, just similar to what I said just a moment ago, they never ask you about your interests, your feelings, your needs. They have no interest in your inner world. And so this is what is so damaging to us as children when we are raised by a narcissist, is they have no capacity to understand us as human beings, and they have no curiosity about our inner world or who we are as human beings. And this really damages our ability to form self-worth and an identity and to be able to emotionally regulate as well. Very much responsible for the formation of BPD and complex PTSD. Number 7, they punish you with silent treatment or rage if you try to address any problems. So if they've done something hurtful and you're trying to have a dialogue about it, what you'll see very commonly is they either shut down and stonewall you, which is basically silent treatment, done to punish you and try to get you to fall back into line and to beg them for forgiveness, or they can just flat out rage and scream and become very scary as well. And both are done as a form of manipulation to control you and get you to fall back in line and to stop trying to make them accountable. Number 8, setting a boundary is useless with narcissists. They will either completely ignore it if you're lucky, or more likely they will rage at you and very commonly play the victim. So boundary setting is perfectly normal and healthy with, regular people. But if you're trying to do boundary setting with a narcissist, most of the time it's just going to absolutely fail because they see that as a violation of their ability to have complete and utter control over everyone else, and the sense of entitlement and grandiosity present in narcissistic individuals. Like, how dare you tell them what to do? So yeah, they're going to rage at you, play the victim, ignore it. They definitely are not going to respect boundaries. Number 9, you feel invisible and like you do not exist. So your authentic self disappears around them. So narcissistic parents especially make their children feel invisible. Again, our needs and feelings and thoughts are not important to the narcissistic parent. The world has to revolve around them at all times. And our authentic self as a growing and developing child disappears because we know very early on that who we authentically really are is not acceptable to the narcissist. And in fact, we actually are in danger if we're our authentic self. So a lot of that will be completely shut down. And this also causes a lot of damage, which contributes directly to, again, the symptoms of CPTSD and BPD and other trauma related disorders. Number 10, this is another common thing we see in relationships with narcissists, is that if you do happen to share something about yourself, oftentimes they will use it to harm you at a later date. So either they'll insult you in the moment, or criticize you or shame you in some way, shape, or form, or they file it away for later use and bring it out and use it at an opportune time for them to belittle you or shame you or insult you or something like that. So yeah, anything you share in confidence will absolutely be used against you with a narcissist. Number 11, this is very self-explanatory. They are utterly and completely self-absorbed. Yeah, you will basically not exist. So if you're in the room with them, it's like you don't exist and the entire world revolves around them. Another very common trait of narcissists is they are very controlling. They will tell you how to think, they'll tell you how to feel, how to dress, how to behave. They are the absolute arbiter of what is right and wrong, and you are always wrong, of course. And if you would just listen to them, you would make everybody's lives easier. Number 13, one of my personal favorites that drove me nuts. They will presume to know how you feel and think without ever asking you. So yeah, they love to put words in other people's mouths. They project a lot. So whatever they're thinking and feeling, they just assume other people think and feel. And so yeah, they make all sorts of presumptions. They don't ever ask people what they're thinking and feeling. They just talk like they're God and they know what you're thinking and feeling. 14, they engage in verbal warfare. And so what that looks like is like name calling, verbal abuse, gossip to other people, smear campaigns where they talk badly about you and make you out to be this horrible person behind your back. So yeah, verbal warfare is very common with narcissistic individuals. As the saying goes, when they can no longer control you, they attempt to try to control how other people perceive you. And smear campaigns and gossip and all of that is exactly how they do this. Number 15, they engage in all types of abuse, whether that's physical violence, emotional abuse, mental or psychological abuse, verbal abuse. They don't care about your feelings. Narcissists are typically quite abusive in how they behave towards other people. Number 16, narcissistic individuals are very manipulative. They will oftentimes control other people to get what they want. And they do this through things like instilling fear in people, threatening them, making them feel obligated to help or do different, activities, for example, because, hey, I'm your parent, look at everything I've done for you, or like guilt tripping, for example. So yeah, people who use fear, obligation, and guilt, it's a form of manipulation and control. And narcissists are famous for doing this as well. Number 17, they sulk and pout if they don't get their way. So this is another form of manipulation, right? Kind of along the line of guilt tripping, is if they don't get their way, if they're not raging at you, then they're going to sulk and pout and give you the silent treatment and all of that until you give in to whatever demands that they wanted you to do. So again, another form of their control. Another way they control people is through blackmail and threatening you when you are not obeying them. So it's very common for narcissists to use things like, well, I'm not going to give you XYZ of your inheritance if you don't obey me, or I'm not going to buy you that new car that I promised you because you've upset me. So yeah, they'll use threats and blackmail to get what they want. Disinheriting children is a common thing that narcissistic parents do. And yeah, if they can't control you through maybe bribes and gifts, then they'll just flat out use threats and blackmail. Number 19, they are secretive and do not share important information about finances, where they're located at any given time, what secret purchases they've made. Narcissists are chronic liars. So along with that lying is hiding of important information. It's very common for narcissistic partners to lie about finances or not share financial matters with loved ones who need to know, or like if they're on a work trip, they're going to lie about their location or what they're doing. And things that they purchased, they'll keep hidden from spouses or loved ones. So yeah, narcissists are famous for being liars and hiding important information. Number 20. So, one of my favorite sayings is if their lips are moving, you can pretty much be sure that they are lying. So, narcissists have reason for hiding and lying information because this is how they control people. If we don't have all the facts and information and they remain kind of an enigma, then we don't have control over them and they can maintain the upper hand. So, they also distort facts and reality. You could say they live in an alternate reality. They are not grounded the way the rest of us are with repercussions and reciprocity and openness and honesty. That is not part of the way they live their lives. Another not so fun trait of narcissists is that you feel like you're walking on eggshells around them. You never know when they're going to explode or blow up on you. The smallest thing can set them off. They're unpredictable. And you also experience like a sense of tremendous fear and discomfort every time you're around them. So many clients that I've worked with throughout the years have described, how even like physically ill they'll feel around the narcissist, where they even get panic and anxiety symptoms because their body is chronically in a state of fight or flight from being around this abusive person. This is probably a more covert or hidden sign that a lot of people don't recognize at first. They'll recognize it when they're in therapy. And, we've been talking for a while about how they can be more informed about abusers. And this, for me, is one of the biggest red flags of an abusive or narcissistic relationship is when you find yourself engaging in what I call mental chess, where you're always trying to remain 2 or 3 or 4 steps ahead of the narcissist and thinking about 50,000 different scenarios about how you could extricate yourself or reply to a certain email, or when I see them next week and they say this to me, okay, I gotta plan what I'm gonna say in response. You're imagining, hundreds of different scenarios, and you're doing this from an extreme sense of hypervigilance, knowing that they're going to try to harm you, and you're trying to protect yourself and stay ahead of them. So that is one of my biggest red flags that somebody's in an abusive relationship that maybe they didn't really recognize until they're in therapy and talking with me that, oh my gosh, I'm in a relationship with a narcissistic individual or an abuser, because you will always have to feel like you are playing this war that you don't want to be in and have to protect yourself at all costs. A common sign of being in a relationship with a narcissist is that your body will automatically go into a state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and fawn being that people pleasing response, by the way. But you might have your heart begin to race. You might experience greater sweating, this sense of dread or like a pit in your stomach. And your body is telling you that this person is unsafe and it's preparing you to try to stay safe, whether that's, running, for example, or fighting in some way, shape, or form. But your body's like, this person is dangerous and we need to prepare to try to stay safe. So if your body automatically engages in fight or flight around somebody, that's a huge red flag that that person is an abuser or a narcissist. So similar to what we just finished talking about, this goes a little bit deeper. So this is where like even the smallest bit of contact from them. So maybe they sent you an email or maybe they sent you a text, for example, and that immediately sends your body into fight or flight. Like you haven't even opened the email, you hadn't even opened the text message or the voicemail, and already you're shaking and your heart is racing and you feel like you're going to throw up. So again, your interactions with them have been so abusive and harmful for such a long period of time that you don't even have to open an email to know exactly what's going to be in it. And what's going to be in it, of course, is abuse and nastiness and screaming at you and accusations, etc. So narcissists, any type of communication with them is going to fill you with dread because none of their communication is pleasant. It's all nasty. It's all mean. It's all attempts to control you. Last but certainly not least, and by no means is this list entirely inclusive. I'm sure you might even think of a few more that I neglected to leave off. But the thought of spending time with them fills you with dread and you begin to try to avoid them at all costs. So this, for example, might look like say you're invited over for Christmas dinner and you're like, oh crap, like what type of excuse can I come up with this year so I don't have to go over to the family's get together, like you just dread the thought of spending even the smallest amount of time with them, and you begin to think of a million excuses for how to get out of these obligations. So that's another kind of lesser known sign that I would say will tell you that you're in a relationship with a narcissist. You're going to absolutely dread being around them, because again, being around them is harmful to us. They're going to get their little digs in. They're going to say their nasty little comments. They're going to be critical and look down on us like we're a piece of crap, right? They're going to begin to do all their nasty behaviors when we do go around them. So yeah, being around them is unpleasant, and we're going to want to avoid being around them at all costs.
Are you a good girl? Are you a good girl? Wet. 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 You want a little snack? Snack? What type of snack do you want? A carrot? You want lunch? Okay. You gonna go get some lunch? Nina, you want a snack?